Hello and welcome back to One Trek Mind with me, Raptor.
And me, Michael.
And today we're going through the next episode of Star Trek Lower Decks, Starbase 80. This is a bit of a filler episode, so I don't think this summary is going to take too long. Basically, the episode starts with a problem occurring in cetacean operations, with the navigation system failing miserably, and the Cerritos is stuck at impulse power, having to go to a starbase for repairs, and the only one in range is the infamous Starbase 80, which we've heard referenced throughout the show by various people. So we're expecting not good things. Basically, when Cerritos gets there, it looks like a starbase from the 2260s, and things already have a somewhat negative atmosphere to them when they're told the transporters aren't bio-friendly and they have to do an Enterprise decontamination gel bit to get on board the station. Incidentally, Commander Ransom has an almost fetishistic love of decontamination gel.
I mean, yeah, he keeps the gel with him pretty much the entire episode.
But yes, they board the station. Mariner is not happy. She's convinced Starbase 80 is cursed because she served here once before, and she's not happy about being back. Basically, the first sort of half of the episode, they're introduced around the starbase. People are having to wear Enterprise-era uniforms because basically the starbase has never been updated. Starfleet's just kind of left it to rot. So everything's old-fashioned, all the technology is out of date. The base is also falling apart. Their main engineering is... the gravity plating is inversed, so they all fall towards the floor, which is the ceiling. And the Cerritos crew is sort of wrapped into helping commit to repairing some things on the station before the Cerritos can get its navigation system repaired.
Also can't forget that half the station is owned by a knife gang.
Yes, the Akamarians own 50% of the base after a Starfleet negotiation gave them 50% of the base.
And they've never renegotiated, so it's just it's just a constant tension for everybody. Although we never see them do anything like bad. The only ones we really directly speak to are actually quite nice and direct our characters where they need to go.
The Cerritos crew split into two groups. Commander Ransom and Captain Freeman go off looking for the part that they need and get wrapped up into doing various jobs, including fixing leaking oxygen, sorting out a bat problem on the lower decks, while Rutherford, Mariner, Boimler and the rest deal with sorting out the gravity problem. However, things take a turn when Rutherford starts acting a bit strange, almost zombie-ish, or inherently really dumb, which convinces Mariner that the curse of Starbase 80 has struck. Basically, it all goes downhill from there. The Cerritos crew all starts coming down with this weird, dumb zombie virus sort of thing, which turns out to be an anaphasic life form, which we last saw in a rather infamous episode of Star Trek Next Generation.
Infamous being the key word there.
Yes, resulted in many memes about Beverly Crusher and ghost fucking. But yes, it's an anaphasic life form that has not been present on Starbase 80, but actually was on the Cerritos in the first place. And they've brought it here to the Starbase, so they have to sneak back on board the Cerritos, clobber a couple of poor whales that are currently possessed by this anaphasic life form, and basically capture said life form and basically stop all the possessions going on. And it turns out it came from a planet that they were at the very beginning of the episode, which they accidentally brought on board. Poor Ransom and Captain Freeman, meanwhile, end the episode basically trying to take on a supersized bat, because Captain Freeman for the whole episode is kind of stuck in this perception that Starbase 80 is not going to beat her, and she's determined to do everything and to succeed, even to the point of fighting a supersized bat.
Which I'm sure they kick the crap out of.
Which I based on what we hear as the episode ends, I'm pretty sure she gives it a stern bashing. But that's basically the episode. It's not really one of much complexity. It's kind of relatively simple. Doesn't really have much impact on this season because they don't mention the dimensional holes or anything. It's literally just a very simple, compact episode on Starbase 80. So yeah, thoughts?
Again, this is my least favorite episode of the season because it is such a filler, non-complex episode. Like, there's really not much to really latch onto in this one. And I was telling you earlier, with this being the final season and this being the final send-off for these characters, I'm getting a little frustrated with filler episodes. I'm like, I would like to see, at the very least, filler episodes with a little more depth. This one really only focuses on the Starbase 80 stuff, so Captain Freeman and Mariner's issues revolving around that. You know, Captain Freeman knowing that her alternate universe counterpart becomes the leader of Starbase 80, so she's just like, oh, I can't let this overcome me like it overcame my other self. And Mariner, having been here before, just having like a really strong prejudice towards the place, and then realizing that it's actually not a bad place, it just needs a little love. I don't know, I was hoping for a lot more, and there's no mention of the like dimensional rifts that are clearly the overarching plot of the season. So to me, it was sort of just a waste of time. Like, it was, as almost every Lower Decks episode is, it was entertaining, it was funny, but there's not even really that much to talk about with this one, and I was disappointed in it, personally.
It struck me how similar this episode was to the pilot, which was basically the same, where you had a strange goo or material or entity creating a sort of zombie-esque effect in the crew, which had to be dealt with, which was the very first episode of Lower Decks, and it's been repeated here, just in a slightly different context. And I was disappointed with the fact that this isn't really the apparent Enterprise episode that the images that they shared gave away. All the images that they shared before this episode came out were just basically of, oh, here's that decontamination chamber from episode you remember, and here's the Enterprise era uniforms that you remember. And it kind of presented the episode as it going to be about, you know, having a lot of Enterprise-esque sort of stuff. And it's not really. They've kind of combined some Enterprise era things with some original series era things. I don't know, I just can't help but feel yet again that Star Trek Enterprise has gotten shortchanged in not really referenced as much as I think it should be. That makes sense?
I mean, it probably always will be. For whatever reason, it is the show that is forgotten. Like, I think 20, 30 years from now, they'll be referencing stuff from like Discovery and Picard before they start referencing stuff from Enterprise, just because it was, I don't know, the least popular. It was the one that people didn't want to watch the most. It was the one that I wouldn't say the one that people criticize the most anymore, now that Discovery, Picard, and a lot of other new Trek shows have come out, but it's just the one that people seem to care the least about.
But yeah, I agree with you that this episode was perhaps even more fillery than the episode last week, and considering we are now halfway through the season, kind of hope that the next half of this season is going to just kind of be less filler and focus on the dimensional hole problem that they keep or that they've already mentioned a few times in other episodes, just strictly from a Star Trek lore and sort of continuity perspective. I also don't understand how Starbase 80 would even exist. Starfleet is pretty good at keeping itself modernized and retrofitted. It's pretty good at not leaving stuff behind. Like, you only have to look at how the retrofits to the Constitution class went. I mean, the Excelsior class is basically in service for a huge period of time, thanks to constant retrofits and refits. The Miranda class as well. Earth space dock has been around for a very long time, constantly being retrofitted and refitted. We saw that in Star Trek Picard, space dock has been expanded now. So it's not like Starfleet leaves technology or bases around to just rot away. I don't think it really makes sense. I suppose for an entertainment aspect, it's funny to have this old, decrepit, Mos Eisley-esque starbase, a hive of scum and villainy in the middle of nowhere that everyone's forgotten. I suppose it makes sense from a funny, comedic entertainment aspect, but it doesn't really fit with how the Federation works.
It makes enough sense to me, because I suppose there's always going to be, in every organization, the ugly stepchild that they don't want to have anything to do with, and they're just like, yeah, whatever, just leave it alone. We're not going to waste resources on that.
I mean, that's Star Trek Enterprise, the ugly stepchild.
Exactly. Which I think is why they put the Enterprise uniforms here, even though the technology is that of Kirk's era, just as a way to kind of say, that is the Star Trek child left behind, just like this Starbase. So I think it was a bit more of a meta commentary on Enterprise itself, rather than necessarily making sense in terms of a whole Starbase being just sort of left to its own devices. That could be a reach, but that's kind of what I gathered from it.
The only other thing that occurred to me while thinking about this episode was cetacean operations as a thing, because this is something that a lot of Star Trek ships are supposed to have, at least Federation ones, these whales in their own area of the ship, vital to navigation. But I can't help but feel there are some problems there with sort of career progression for cetacean operations officers, because obviously there's not Star Trek Federation ships that are flooded with water, so
there could be.
You couldn't have a cetacean captain, could you?
I mean, again, there could be a ship with
there could be
that's entirely filled with water, and it's just cetacean officers.
If not, these whales are sort of stunted in career progression, and they only can operate in areas that are flooded and everything for them, which seems to be just like a single room on this ship. I can't help but feel it's a bit cruel to keep these poor whales in just one room, not interacting with the rest of the crew, not really getting much of a chance to progress their careers in other ways. It must be, just strictly from a mental health perspective, quite tough for cetacean crew members. And I mean, they got shocked to shit when the navigation system failed as well.
When you bring it up, it is a bit of a problem that I don't think they really thought about when they first introduced the idea of cetacean operations way back in Next Gen.
Like, how does it even work? Like, is there must be like a Starfleet Academy underwater for cetacean officers?
I mean, they're in San Francisco right at the bay. There probably is an underwater section of classes for them just underwater over in the bay, which is literally right next to Starfleet Academy.
The opening of the episode shows Boimler and the rest of them having gone to, at least been on like some swimming expedition underwater to look at this algae. One would have thought that you'd just send the cetacean crew, because when it comes to underwater shit, you're gonna send the most adapted for the underwater shit, aren't you?
You would think, but apparently not. I guess
so they don't even get to go on away missions. They can't go on away missions. They don't get to visit Quarks on DS9 when the ship stops by. They're trapped in one room. It doesn't seem like a good career for them at all.
Well, they get their whole deck, don't they?
I don't know. The MSDs always show it as just a room. Maybe worth further investigating the Cerritos' MSDs.
Yeah, maybe we should start protesting this.
Cruelty to cetaceans. But yeah, I don't have anything else to say about the episode. I just thought it was kind of disappointing, really.
I would agree. Again, entertaining as always, but disappointing for me. I was definitely hoping for more.
Right, well, let us know down in the comments what you thought about this particular episode, if you've watched it. And don't forget also, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please consider doing so. Sorry this episode is coming out a little late. I've been very ill, as you could probably still hear, so we've kind of had to leave it a bit for me to recover. But yeah, we will see you next time. Until then, it's goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.